Welcome to Go Beyond, Learning Experiences by Code Metro. Our goal in creating this series is to provide you with tangible, oftentimes little-known tips that you can apply to both your business and your career. Our topics will vary, as will our speakers, and we welcome you to visit our website to get the latest edition of Go Beyond. We appreciate your feedback and invite you to send us your thoughts and questions, as well as any suggestions you might have for future topics. Our first edition of Go Beyond focuses on tips for completing the CMS 1500 form for faster payment. Our presenter today is our own Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Kim Finger. Kim has an extensive background in autism, having served as a direct service provider in Connecticut many years ago, after which she segued into the world of executive coaching. Prior to joining Code Metro, Kim was the Chief Operating Officer at Autism Spectrum Therapies, a large California-based autism services company. Kim created the insurance billing department at Code Metro and is here to share with you her tips on completing the 1500 form.
Hello, it's my pleasure to share with you our tips on how to successfully complete a CMS 1500 form. A question we're frequently asked by our customers is which fields on the 1500 form must be completed for the CMS form to be accepted and not rejected by the insurance carrier. So today we're going to answer this question as well as review which fields are optional to complete and which can be left blank. We'll also be reviewing what information is entered in each of the mandatory and optional fields, recognizing that the language on the 1500 form is foreign to most providers and a source of confusion when preparing the form. Okay, let's take a look at the 1500 form. There are 33 fields on the form, of which 2 fields can always be left blank without worry, and that's field 10D, reserved for local use, and field 15, if patient has had same or similar illness, give first date. Now that we have those out of the way, let's talk about the fields that must be completed to submit a clean claim. Before we go through the numbered fields, let's start with entering the name and address of the insurance company in the top right-hand corner of the form. Although you may be submitting the form electronically, the name and address of the insurance carrier must be included in this space on the form itself. Field 1A is a required field. In this field, you will enter the patient's insurance policy number as indicated on their insurance card. In some cases, the card will be in the parent's name and their policy number will be entered here. The ID number, though, will reflect not the parent, but the patient's insurance ID number. Fields 2 and 5 capture patient name and address and must be completed. The only optional field is telephone number. Fields 4 and 7 will contain the same name and address as fields 2 and 5. Although the name on the insurance card may be the mother or father's name, recent changes dictate that the patient be the policyholder, so enter the patient's name and address here. In field 3, enter the patient's birthday and select the appropriate box to indicate their sex. Field 6 is also a required entry, and given recent changes, self will be the box you will check as the patient is the policyholder. The claim represents the patient's coverage, not the guarantor or parent's information. Skipping to field 10, is patient condition related to employment, auto accident, or other accident? This field must be completed, and in the ABA industry will almost always be defaulted to no. Field 11. Only 11D is a mandatory field that must be completed. It reads, is there another health benefit plan? Select yes if the patient has a secondary insurance policy, and no if they only have one insurance plan. Both fields 12 and 13 must be completed. These fields ask for the signature of the parent or authorized person. Field 12 for the purpose of releasing medical information, and field 13 authorizing the insurance company to pay the provider for the services rendered. In most cases, you will have the parent or another responsible party sign an authorization form that you provide them and retain in the client file. This then allows you to simply enter signature on file in each of these fields. Field 12 also requires a date. This date can be the date the parent or authorized party signed the authorization form. Please note, though, that the date must be within 1 calendar year of the dates of service that you're billing for on this claim form. Field 20 is the next field that must be completed. Outside lab. If your claim includes charges for lab services that took place outside of your clinic, select yes. In most instances in the ABA industry, your default response will be no. Field 21. Field 21 is where you will enter the patient's diagnostic codes, and there may be up to 4 entered should the patient have multiple diagnoses. The first diagnosis entered in line 1 of Field 21 is the primary diagnosis. The only time multiple diagnosis codes will be listed on a claim for ABA is when the services provided are related to multiple diagnosis codes and the rendering provider holds the credentials to oversee all of the services listed on the claim form. In the case that the services are unrelated to multiple diagnosis codes, you would enter only the primary diagnosis on the claim form. Field 24 contains 6 rows and 11 columns, of which all but 3 of the columns must be completed for your claim to be processed. Each row in Field 24 is a charge line. Let's start with 24A, Dates of Service. This is the date the service was provided. In most cases, the from and to dates will be the same, as the service appointment will have begun and ended on the same day. The only time the dates will differ is if it's an inpatient service, such as a hospital stay. 24B, Place of Service. This field captures a numeric code that indicates to the insurance company where the services were provided. The most commonly used place of service codes in ABA are 12, which means the services were provided in the patient's home, 11, which stands for office, meaning that the services were provided in a clinic or office setting, and 03, which is school. 24D. The first column in 24D is where you enter the CPT or HCPC code, which is a numeric or alphanumeric code that tells the insurance company what service you provided. There's a lot of confusion about CPT codes and HCPC codes, so this is a topic worth taking a moment to talk about. In the medical world, it's standard practice that if you go to a doctor for an EKG, they're going to bill your insurance company and indicate a CPT code for EKG in Field 24D. Then, if at some point later in time you go to another doctor and have another EKG done, that doctor will also bill the insurance company, and the code they enter in 24D will be the same code as the code entered by your prior doctor when you had your previous EKG done. The challenge in ABA is that autism services have only recently been covered by private insurance, and because ABA is so new to the insurance world, there are not universal codes being used across all insurance carriers. So for one insurance company, you may be instructed to use one code for direct therapy, and for another company for the same service, you may be told to use an entirely different code. Another source of confusion is when an insurance company tells you to use the same code for different services that you provide. For example, use code H0031 for supervision and for assessment. If you charge a higher rate for assessments than you do for supervision, you'll need to be sure to get different codes for each service, because there's no way on a CMS form to indicate which service you provided, and otherwise you will be paid the same by the insurance company for both services. Related to codes are modifiers, and these are included in Field 24D as well. Modifiers are optional and can signify many different things, but in ABA, they are typically used to indicate the credentials of the person who actually provided the service. For example, an HO modifier indicates to the insurance company that the person who provided the service has a master's degree. This is important as you may be able to negotiate different reimbursement rates for different modifiers when negotiating your contract. It's not uncommon for the supervisor on the case to periodically provide the direct services should the therapist be out sick, for example. By applying the HO modifier to the code for this date of service, the insurance company knows that the person who actually provided the service was a master's level person, and they may in fact pay you a higher reimbursement rate depending upon the parameters defined in your contract. For more information on modifiers, you can visit our CMS 1500 form tip sheet on our website. 24E, Diagnosis Pointer. If a diagnostic code is listed in Field 21, then 24E simply has a 1 in this field. If, though, there are multiple diagnostic codes listed in Field 21, then the pointer would read 1, 2, for example, Or in the case that there are 4 diagnostic codes listed, it would read 1, 2, 3, 4. 24F, charges. This is where you indicate the total amount to be billed for this charge line. This will be calculated by multiplying the fee you charge per unit times the number of units of service you provided. So for example, if your fee schedule states you charge $15 per unit and you provided 2 units of service, $30 will be entered on that charge line. Field 24G is where you indicate the number of units of service you provided. Please note that different codes have different minutes per unit. For example, code 96152 is a CPT code that's broken down into 15-minute units, whereas 90806 is a code that has 60-minute units. Therefore, if you provide 1 hour of service and bill it on the CMS form as a 96152 CPT code, the number of units indicated in 24G would be 4. If this same service, though, was billed as 90806, then the units would be 1, as it is a 60-minute unit and you provided 60 minutes of service. The next mandatory field is field 24J, Rendering Provider ID Number. The rendering provider is the person who serves as the ultimate responsible party for this service provided to this client. The rendering provider must have the required credentials to serve in this capacity and must be credentialed with the insurance company. Depending upon the size of your agency and what services you provide, you may have one rendering provider or you may have many. For example, if you're a small organization that only provides ABA services, you may have one person with a BCBA who's credentialed with the insurance companies and whose NPI number serves as the rendering NPI for all the clients you serve. Or you may provide ABA and speech services, in which case you may have one or more BCBAs credentialed who serve as rendering providers for ABA services, and one or more SLPs who are credentialed with the insurance companies and serve as the rendering provider for your speech services. In any case, there must be a rendering provider number on each charge line. Also note, if there are different rendering providers for the same child, that necessitates using separate 1500 forms. As you'll see in Field 31, there can only be one person's signature in Field 31, and this is where the rendering provider signs, so claim forms must be separated in the case that the same client has services with different rendering providers. Moving along, Field 25 is where you're going to enter your organization's tax ID number and check the EIN box. For sole proprietors, this may be a Social Security number, in which case you will check the SSN box. Field 26, Patient Account Number. This is a series of letters or numbers of your choosing, but data must be in this field for the claim to be processed. Field 28 is the total charge field and is the sum of the charges entered on each of the charge lines above. For Field 29, simply enter 0. Field 30, Balance Due. Because the amount paid is 0, the amount entered in Field 30 and the amount entered in Field 28, total charge, will be the same amount. Field 31 is where you will enter the name of the rendering provider with their degree and/or credentials and the date you are processing the claim. This does not have to be a wedding signature. It's enough to write their name, or if you're using software, it will populate their name in type. The last of our mandatory fields is Field 33, Billing Provider Info and Phone Number. This is where your organization's name, address, and phone number are populated. This is where your explanation of benefits, otherwise known as your EOBs, and your checks will be sent. 33A is where your organization's NPI number is included. Remember, your organization has an NPI number, as do your providers, and these are different numbers. For more information on NPI numbers, please visit our CMS 1500 form tip sheet on our website. This concludes our review of each of the mandatory fields on the CMS 1500 form. We're now going to review the optional fields and under what circumstances you'll enter data into those fields. Field 1 is the very first field on the CMS 1500 form, and it tells the insurance carrier the category of insurance that the policy falls into. It can be left blank, but we recommend you select the appropriate box. In most cases, you'll select Group Health plan. The next optional field is Field 8, Patient Status. For those providers whose clients are children, you can safely leave this field blank. Field 9 is also an optional field and will be completed only if the client has secondary or tertiary insurance. Field 11 is for indicating the insured's policy group or FACA number. Some policies have a group number and some do not. If there is a group number indicated on the insurance card, enter it here. If there's no group number on the card, you can leave this field blank unless it's a Medicare policy, in which case you must enter none in this field, otherwise the claim will be rejected. Field 11A, Insured's date of birth and sex, is the same information as is populated in Field 3 and therefore can be left blank here. Field 11B asks for the employer's name or school name and also can be left blank. 11C, Insurance plan name or program name, is optional and can be left blank as well. Field 14 requests date of onset, and for most ABA providers, this field will be left blank as there is not a date of injury, illness, or pregnancy onset. Same for Field 15 and Field 16. Field 17 requests the name of the referring provider. In some cases, you may enter a pediatrician, for example, but this field will be left blank in most cases. Field 18 will only be completed if the patient you are servicing is being hospitalized, so in most cases for most ABA providers, this field will also be left blank. Field 19 is used when you're resubmitting a claim. The space will be used to notate the change or changes you've made. For example, corrected claim, corrected diagnosis, or corrected units. Field 22 will be left blank as well unless you're submitting to Medicaid, in which case you will enter the Medicaid resubmission code and the original reference number. Field 23 is an important field as it must be completed if the carrier has provided you an authorization number for the services you're providing to the client. In our experience, about 50% of the time there's an authorization number. If you have one, be sure to enter it here. 24C, EMG. This field is no longer in effect. It was previously used for type of service, but is no longer in effect since the implementation of NPIs. 24D. If you're using codes that allow for modifiers, you would indicate here the modifier, if there is one for this charge line. For more information on modifiers, you can refer to our tip sheet on our website. 24H. This field is for healthy families in government use and at this time is not in use in the ABA field. 24I. This field is also no longer in use since the implementation of the NPI. Field 32, Service Field Location Information, is the last field that we have to cover. Most insurance companies do not require this field be completed, but there are some that do. For example, Value Options is one insurance company that does require this field be completed, even if the information in the field is a duplicate of what's entered in Field 33. It's very important that you confirm with the insurance company that the codes you're using will be approved for payment given the location where you intend to provide the services. For example, in some instances, a code will not be paid if the service location is home, whereas it will be paid if services are provided in the school and vice versa. This is all very insurance company specific and important that you ask questions when in discussion with your insurance company. We hope that you found this webinar today informative. We welcome your questions. We also want to acknowledge that given how new ABA and related services are to insurance companies, things are ever changing. It's important that you ask questions when contracting with insurance companies to ensure that you have any insurance company specific information that may impact how you complete the claim, where you send the claim, and how you send the claim. Asking questions up front will save you time and money on the back end.
Thanks for watching Go Beyond, Learning Experiences by Code Metro. We hope you found this video helpful as you strive for efficiency and success. Visit our website at www.codemetro.com for more information on our business management services.